Hello, everyone. Auspicious greetings, and welcome to tonight's Dharma talk. I am Chi from Orlando Guang Temple. Tonight, we are honored to have Venerable Miao Guang joining us and give us the talk. Venerable Miao Guang is known for her proficiency in both Chinese and English. She also holds a long list of responsibilities. She is the Deputy Chancellor for International Affairs at Guang Institute of Humanistic Buddhism. She is the director of Guang Dictionary of Buddhism English Translation Project. She is also the personal English interpreter for Master Xing. In tonight's talk, Venerable Miao Guang will be talking about ways to renew our understanding of Dharma in our everyday life based on Master Xing's book, Buddha, Dharma, Pure and Simple. You're welcome to ask questions. We will collect them and ask them for you after the talk. Please raise your question in the comment section of YouTube. And also, please be sure to have your name and location noted in the question. For example, I am Chi-Sum from Florida, USA, and my question is. This way, we will be able to address your question and address you correctly. Again, please use the comment section to raise your question in YouTube. Now, Venerable Miao Guang, if you would, please take it away. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening. First of all, I would like to express my thank you to Venerable Abbess Yonghan, to Venerable Miao Han, Venerable Ru Yuan, and all BLIA members in Miami and Florida. Thank you for having me this evening. It's been a very trying time with a lot of uncertainty and changes that we're learning to cope with. But certainly this evening, being able to see all of your calm and wonderful smiles, I believe it does make a difference to many of us. And so I'm very honored to join all of you guys in Florida and Miami to talk about D for Buddhism. That is the topic of my sharing tonight. Okay. And so many of you probably wondered why D for Buddhism, right? Has Venerable Miao Guang made a mistake, right? Has this long hours of lockdown changed our minds? Well, certainly I just wanted to perhaps rattle the cage a little bit and to ask if everybody is still thinking with a sharp and agile mind when it comes to our daily practices of Buddhism. So D for Buddhism, I do it for a couple of reasons. First of all, as we talk about Buddhism, right? I'm just wondering if any of you have ever thought about where this word come from. Okay. Did it come from the Buddha? Right? When the Buddha attained enlightenment and began to teach the Dharma, did he claim to be teaching the whole idea of Buddhism? The answer is certainly no. We must remember that the word Buddha comes from the Sanskrit root of Bud, which means to awake. So underneath the stars, beneath the Bodhi tree, right, as this newly awakened sage sat with the universe, feeling absolute tranquility and peace, he was asked a question, right? You claim to be the Buddha now, so what are you? Right? Are you a god? The Buddha said no. Are you a creator now? He said no. Are you the king or the ruler of the world? He said no. And so the questions continued. If you keep saying no, so what are you? And then his final answer was simply that I am just awakened. And so for that reason, when we look at Buddha, right, it basically translates into the awakened one, right? One who has awakened from the long slumber of delusion and lack of clarity, not being able to understand what is it and why is it that we are in the world to go through all of these experiences. And so if you agree with the definition, when we come back to Buddha, right, the awakened one, then Buddhism certainly isn't what he claimed to be in the very beginning. Let's just say, as he continued to teach throughout his life, the Buddha never claimed for this to be a religion. He never claimed for this to be anything. He simply reached out to anyone he could and reminded everybody that he's here to share this profound understanding that somehow will bring us a sense of tranquility and peace, something that allows us to confront the realities of life with a greater wisdom as well as a more peaceful mind. And so that being said, the idea of Buddha and Bud and ism, right? Separating the two, we'll see that the second part of ism is actually a belief, right? An attitude or a style, right? For example, monotheism, right? All kinds of ism to represent a particular philosophy or style. And the truth is, the word Buddhism never actually came about until the 19th century, which is about, let's say, some few thousand years after the appearance of the historical Buddha. It was actually brought about by Orelstein, a Portuguese expeditionist who arrived in China with a group of British people. And what he did was, having purchased a whole stack of manuscripts from the Dunhuang caves, he began to read it. And as he read through the manuscript and came across this wonderful teaching by the awakened one, he basically said that, wow, this is amazing. We're looking at a historical man who actually taught about the theory of awakening, right? And since it is the theory of awakening, let's call it Buddhism. And so this term, having come about only in the 19th century, basically means a religion of Eastern and Central Asia that is based on the teachings of Gautama Buddha. And so coming to this part, even if we read this as part of a definition, my next question for all of you is, have you ever wondered what kind of Buddhism have you been learning or practicing? And has this type of Buddhism or the theory or teaching of awakening been suitable or practical to you? Or has it become a daily burden of ritualistic procedures that does not bring about any sense of happiness or peace? If that's happening to you, then you might need to think about the journey you're taking, right? What's worse than going on a journey carrying a whole lot of heavy baggages? The answer will be having to carry somebody else's heavy baggage. And without knowing what's actually inside, your journey to awakening or liberation would be even more tougher. And so certainly we don't hope for anyone to fall into this kind of situation. We would like you to go on this journey with sufficient strength and the right knowledge that allows you to confront the issues that happen alongside your journey. This becomes extremely important. Otherwise, your Buddhism would only be D instead of B. I hope I clarified the purpose of my title of tonight's talk. And now to continue into my elaboration on D for Buddhism, right? What is that D? Okay. Certainly, the basic Buddhist teaching is that everything tends to be nothing, right? And nothing can be everything. In the very theory of emptiness, we are taught about the intricate web of interdependence, where one condition depends on another, right? I depend on you and you depend on me. Without anyone here, maybe tonight's talk wouldn't be sufficient. And so this interdependent relationship allows for things to continuously renew themselves. And that put into one word in the truth would be Dharma. Right? Dharma for Buddha's teachings, Dharma for truth, or Dharma simply for the everyday phenomena or things that arise and cease around you. And since we cannot change the arising and ceasing of any of these, it becomes even more important for us to find a way to coexist with them. So how do I make peace with myself as a Buddhist? When I was young, as I started to learn the Dharma, as I came across the practices of Buddhism through chanting, visiting the temples, and paying respect to our respectable teachers, somehow I believe that once I begin learning Buddhism, once I take refuge in the Triple Gem, I will be forever free from the cruelty of dukkha or suffering. I will be forever free from my personal afflictions. Right? My life will be just pure, it will be perfect. My life will be filled with nothing but happiness and joy, and nothing of the kinds of happenings that brings anger or sadness to me. Unfortunately, I was wrong. Right? The levels of dukkha, the uncertainties, and life's hardships simply continue to come onto us, stacking over one another, making life heavier and heavier. It was at that moment when I realized that just because I learned Buddhism, it doesn't mean that I can ever get away from them. But most importantly, carrying the right baggage of Dharma on me somehow allows me to be more equipped in confronting the realities. And so at that moment, I feel like I had a change of attitude. I had a change of perspective on what exactly I'm going through. Right? Since the Buddha already proclaimed that being born in this world, we can never be away from what we don't want to be with. Right? Oldness, old age, sickness, death, separation from loved ones, right? Being stuck with the people you don't like, probably what we think is the worst, among all forms of dukkha, right? And the continuous arising of dukkha caused by the whole idea of ego, right? The sense of I that have this type of expectations in life. And then we continue to be disappointed in life. But now, coming face to face with reality, suddenly the attitude becomes changed. And I would say this change of reality, I would have to say that I have to really express my thanks to our founder, Venerable Master Xing Yun, who has continuously to show us a different perspective of life, right? Guiding us along the side of enlightenment by adding us to this wonderful, sacred, and spiritual community where we grow with one another, we're there to support one another, and we're there to share our wisdom and experiences with one another. So he continues to do this for the entire 90 years of his life until he was finally struck down by a stroke that temporarily took away his memory and his speech. But though we're sad about not being able to hear personally from him in the previous 2 years, we're nevertheless very glad and grateful to come across and to be in close contact with the teachings he has long prepared for us. So Buddha Dharma Pure and Simple, or in Chinese, 佛法真义, is one of his latest teachings. On the surface, when we look at 佛法真义, it seems like he wants to give us an overall introduction about Buddhism. But for those who actually go into this book, into the short articles, somehow you might be a bit confused as to why these articles are not telling you what the Triple Gem are. It's not telling you what the Noble Eightfold Path is. Well, in reality, he never meant for Buddha Dharma Pure and Simple to be a Buddhism 101 book. Instead of being a book on the basic concepts of Buddhism, let's just see that Buddha Dharma Pure and Simple is supposed to be a compendium on the basic attitudes about Buddhism. It's like relaying the foundations and building the pillars of a house. Only when the foundations are strong and the pillars of the house are straightened, then it's able to carry everything else in life. And so that being said, I hope after today's sharing, you might begin to look at the so-called Buddhism or Dharma from very new perspectives. I hope you awaken your courage and strength to challenge, to question, to test, and to really put into practice what you learn from the books, from the sutras that were taught by the Buddhas, and the teachings taught by the monastics who dedicate their lives to sharing the truth. And so that being said, if it's not a book on basic concepts, it is a compendium on the basic attitudes about Buddhism. What do we do? Right? It is a whole new perspective. So just as George Bernard Shaw once said, life isn't about finding yourself. Right? Life is about creating yourself. As a philosopher, a writer, someone who looks upon the truth of this world from the West, what he wanted to mention is the importance to continue to self-evaluate, to think about what you're going through, right? To experience the process of transvaluation, to renew yourself every day. Right? We do this every day, voluntarily or involuntarily. Voluntarily through the power of our minds, but involuntarily through the force of impermanence. Right? Every day we wake up as different persons. After each breath, you're different. And so if we accept this reality, right, how do we make it our strength to continue to evolve and to change? Especially at this very trying time where COVID-19 has taken away our accepted normal. And it has left us in confusion and fear as to how do we recreate the new normal. But with this new ability to transvaluate or to self-evaluate, it becomes a much easier task. And so as we continue to learn from wise ones, Professor Lancaster from Berkeley, he shared a story about when he started to teach at UC Berkeley in the 1970s, right? Carrying the knowledge of basic Buddhism. He started off by creating folders of teachings about the Triple Gem, about the Four Noble Truths, about the Noble Eightfold Paths. And what he did every day was when he had a class, he would just walk into the lecture room with a folder, open it, and speak according to the folder. He did this for 7 years, until one day he started to ask himself, what have I been doing? Right? If I say the same thing every day, every year, who have I become? And so after some pondering, he took down all of his folders, created a bonfire, and burned 7 years of his work. He decided to start anew. And to his surprise, starting anew allows him to create with much more different perspectives because life experiences make you a very different person. So he says, I feel like I've reinvented myself for about 20 years in my life. Every time I feel that I can relax, the world changes on me. Right? I just have to be a different person. Otherwise, I'd become a recluse. And in his message in that talk to us, he says, we all have to reinvent ourselves many, many times. As what we learn now will not be enough to last ourselves for our whole life. It just isn't enough. Medical doctors who don't invent themselves every week cannot help us. So we too have to reinvent ourselves every day. Just think about the number of times when we have to update the applications in our smartphone, right? You learn something new on YouTube and a week later, there's a new function, right? And you can either choose to give up and then give up YouTube altogether, which becomes a window to new information, or you can just push yourself a little bit more to pick up that new skill. And having done so, you open another window. And so are we ready to self-evaluate or to reinvent our understanding of Buddhism? So the B becomes the D. If you are, maybe you are ready to go into the book, Buddha Dharma, Pure and Simple by Venerable Master Xing Yun. And as a short walkthrough of the book, I would like to share with you the 5 ways I see why Venerable Master coins 佛法真义 as something pure and simple. He is not recreating the Dharma, but simply asking how many more perspectives can we get to peek into this diamond? Because from every different angle, you will see a different ray of colors in the diamond. And so I have 5 ways. The first way that has been taught through Buddha Dharma pure and simple is, first of all, for us to see what is the Dharma. Okay? And number 1, the first way to see true Dharma is to see it with your intrinsic and true nature, as for the Zhen or the pure. Right? By intrinsic and true, it's something that we were born with, something that remains untainted and pure and clear. And how are we able to connect with the Dharma through this real you? Right? You might say every day you carry baggages, you have perspectives, you have misunderstandings, you carry some kind of resentments from life, from having been treated wrongly. And then you would turn to the Buddha and Bodhisattvas and say, I have been good, so why is life treating me badly? Right? And let's just say at that moment, if we can take a few seconds, remind us that, okay, this is a moment for us to revisit the Dharma with our intrinsic nature, then we might start to see something very different. Okay? And so what is this intrinsic nature within all of us? Is it the same? In his preface of Buddha Dharma Pure and Simple, he opens up with the story of the 3 animals crossing the river, right? A rabbit, a horse, and an elephant. Right? And as a rabbit treads across the river, it would struggle to keep its head afloat above water, right? It would have to keep paddling with its short and small paws in order to move forward. As for a horse may take a few more steps before it can actually touch the bottom of the river. But every once in a while, it has to prevent itself from being washed away from the torrent. What about the elephant? The elephant can touch the bed of the river immediately and just tread across to the other shore in a few steps. And so each animal, right, takes different efforts and different time and different abilities to cross the river. But that being said, what Venerable Master Xing wants to tell us is that it's okay to be a rabbit, right? It's okay to be a horse. It's okay to be an elephant, right? The most important thing is that no matter who you are, if you see the goal, right? Although the time, the ability may be different, but eventually we all get there, right? Are you ready to accept this belief, right? We'll eventually get there, even after 3 great Asamkhya Kalpas. And Buddha knows how long that will be. But what matters is that we're still here. Okay? And so I want to just kind of add a bit more to this belief in who you truly are and accepting who you truly are. This is a psychological test, right? I want to ask you, what do you see on the screen? Okay. You should be able to see 2 things or maybe 3 things on the screen, right? And so for those who are on the Zoom session with us in Florida and Miami, I want to ask you, please raise your hand if you see a monkey. Okay, we see a couple of people, right? Okay, thank you. And what about those? Please raise your hand if you see a tiger. Okay, a bit more less, right? Nevertheless, still enough, right? So this is a test of the active side of your brain, right? So if you see a monkey, it means your right brain is much more active than your left brain. And so active right brains means you're full of creativity and ideas, right? Other than analytical and critical thinking, you're more willing to trust in your instinct. And you're ready to start anew, even after you have failed and made a mistake. So your strong point is to be able to this high awareness of your strength. You know how to make use of it, and you're very quick at correcting your shortcomings. So this is like an awareness of your Bodhi wisdom, right? You constantly are able to allow that light to shine. What about those who see a tiger, right? Those who see a tiger means your left brain is much more active than your right brain. It means you're a very logical person. You're very good at analyzing things. When you set out to complete a goal, you do it in a very systematic and well-planned way. Okay? But the problem is sometimes you may overthink matters, right? That keeps you in where you are. You may be more hesitant to take a step forward. Okay? And so in this point, make your strength, that is the strength to continue to find facts and data to correct your method. And then you will slowly shift towards the goal, right? So for those who have a more active left brain, right, turn to your gentleness, turn to your humbleness. Your gentle and humble heart will allow you to move forward better. Okay. But just a bit more, can I see a show of hands for those who actually see a lizard? Okay. Anyone? Show your hands. Okay. I just want to say, if you see a lizard, you might need to visit the eye doctor because there's no such thing on the screen. Okay. But nevertheless, this little image is only one of the emphasis for you to say, hey, it's okay, right? Trust in who you are. Depend on your strength. That will allow you to keep moving on. That's the most important thing. And that translated back into Buddhism would be this belief during the refuge ceremonies conducted by Venerable Master Xing Yun. He always made it a tradition to ask everybody to repeat after him, saying that I am a Buddha. Right? And to say that I am a Buddha, it doesn't immediately make you a Buddha. Right? Sometimes this becomes quite a heavy idea, isn't it? You would say, I'm not a Buddha yet, right? I can't be perfect. I feel really bad for how far away I am as a Buddha. A Buddha is perfect. A Buddha is compassionate. A Buddha treats all living beings equally. But as a human being, I'm full of doubts, right? Sometimes I'm selfish. I discriminate between people. And if we think about it this way, then it would tend to kind of turn us away from the whole idea. But what if Venerable Master Xing Yun meant that by saying that I am a Buddha, you are letting your inner Buddha shine. Right? He says by admitting that you are a Buddha too, it's like discovering a power plant in your mind that continues to generate energy and light. So if you're able to allow light to shine within you, right? Imagine all the dark sides within you will slowly be illuminated by that inner Buddha. And so to accept and believe in the fact that we all are Buddhas to be already puts us in a position of bodhisattvas, right? Sentient beings in the process of awakening, right? We do it step by step every day, right? It's not a one-off trip, right? You don't become a Buddha immediately, but we don't want to be put off by how tedious and difficult this journey is. So a day-to-day practice becomes key to how we allow that inner light to shine. Right? I remember at age 12, right after I moved to Sydney, Australia with my family, my mother set up this mini Buddha altar inside our house. And although I had my older sister and an elder brother with me, my mother assigned this task solely to me. She said to me, okay, from now on, every morning before you leave the house for school, make sure you lay 3 prostrations to the Buddha. Right? And every evening when you come back to the house, if I'm still busy, be the one to offer 3 sticks of incense and pay respect to the Buddha too. So I did it every day. I did it while my sister and my brother were having breakfast. I did it. I made the incense offerings while my sister and my brother were watching TV. Right? And doing that at age 12, right? As a child, I started to wonder if my mother was actually punishing me. Why was she making me do this while my siblings were able to just have fun and enjoy themselves? Right? I started to doubt it. Right? But being the usual obedient and good child, I've carried on with this unique task. And what happened after that is I discovered that every day before I left the house, as I make the 3 prostrations, I would secretly wish to the Buddha, Buddha, please bless me, make sure that I do well in my exam, right? Buddha, please bless me, make sure that I get along with my friends. I started to connect to the Buddha. I started to pray to the Buddha for blessings. Okay? And then as I grew up, I grew and entered university, the prayers turned to apologies and reflections. As I lay these frustrations, I would say to the Buddha, Buddha, allow me to apologize for what I've done wrong to my family and my friends, right? Sorry that I wasn't paying attention to what I needed to do in university. And I'm sorry for not being able to work hard enough, and so on. And so as the prayers and the apologies and the good wishes continue to arise when I laid the prostrations and made the incense, now that I look back to it, I discovered that these were all moments of interaction. These were all inner dialogues between me, myself, and the Buddha. I appreciated that because it gave me enough time to do reflection before I decided on how I want to react to life, especially to events that displeased me. And so the ability to really interact with yourself, with that inner Buddha, right, it simply is a chance for you to see what's inside you. So at least I see my mind. Before you make peace with the world, you have to first make peace with yourself. Otherwise, you're just stuck. Therefore, when we rethink the expression, when Venerable Master Xing Yun says, hey, say it, repeat after me, I'm a Buddha, right? I hope it becomes a continuous reflection and the ability to find the torch within the light that shines on all the dark corners. And that way we come closer to our true nature or our true Buddha. Now, the second way for us to look at the Dharma is how do we define the Dharma, right? One way to see the truth is to see the opposite of what is false or wrong. Right? In many cases, the whole idea of prajna or compassion may seem like very huge topics that are difficult to grasp or put into practice. And so we can tackle this in a philosophical way, right? By saying that if you don't understand what is Dharma, begin with what is not. Okay. Once a young man asked a wise one, he asked, what is wisdom? And the wise man said, the ability to make the right decision. Where does this ability to make the right decision come from? Experience. And where does experience come from? The wise man said, wrong decisions. And so we continue to refine ourselves based on our life experiences that has failed to achieve our goal. But that is not to discourage us. You might discover that by doing this, we're simply doing it in the very Socratic way. Right? The Greek philosopher Socrates, he once said that the only true wisdom in knowing is knowing you know nothing. Right? The best thing I've known is that I have known nothing. Right? It's refreshing, isn't it? Because if you ever move into a house, right? A house with a long deserted garden and you want to clear up, the first step would never to be simply to cut down everything and to wipe out all the plants. The first step would be to observe the garden and to figure out which are the weed and which are the precious plants that we can continue to nurture. And so filtering out this, I look back to the way I grew up experiencing Buddhism. Right? I'm not sure how many of you experienced this, but you will see a lot of this in the East. Right? The whole idea of Buddhist salvation, soteriology, is the more you pray to the Buddha, the more blessings you get. Right? And so we tend to fall into this misconception that the more offerings you give to the Buddha, the more fortunate we become. And so during Lunar New Year in East Asia, in Japan, in Korea, in Taiwan, in mainland China. You see this because there's the Buddhist myth that if you become the first one to offer an incense, you will have good luck all year through. Right? So you have to fight to be that first. Therefore, on New Year Eve, you would always see a whole group of people lined up outside the temple wall, pushing, squeezing, fighting against each other so that the moment when the midnight gate opens, they would run and dash into the front of the shrine in order to become the first to offer the incense. I once saw a video in Japan. Right? You see a group of young men wishing to be the lucky guy of the year, right? They run, they crawl, when they fall, they get up, right? They push each other out of the way. And so that when they finally reach that incense burner, which is about 1 kilometer away, right? You see this first winner. The winner like shoots his incense into the burner like he's shooting a dart. And he's all bruised. His shirt is torn, right? And he's panting, he's hurt. Then he turns around and he goes, wow, I'm going to be the lucky guy of the year. Right? So imagine that, right? How appealing is that to you? So some of the teachings in Buddha Dharma Pure and Simple would be to correct these types of understanding by telling you that that's not what it meant, right? Venerable Master Xing Yun just reminded us that by offering the first incense of the year, it's not asking you to be the first in the world. I mean, how many firsts are there in the world? But we're looking at a few billion people in this world. And so in order to correct this understanding, he says, okay, instead of doing this, why don't you elegantly, peacefully, and joyfully just offer your first incense of the year, right? So 烧头香, 上头香是你今年的第一支香. And so by doing that, at Foguangshan, you no longer see this. By doing this at Foguangshan, you might also no longer see people waiting up midnight lunar year, exhausted and tired, after preparing for the day, just to make sure that an incense is made at the first minute of the new year. Because that's not what it meant. Right? It's not segregated by time or space, but simply to ensure a good start of the year. Right? If you wake up, say at 8 o'clock on the Lunar New Year, New Year's Day, then simply make that first wish. Make a good start for yourself, right? Peacefully and joyfully. And so as we correct that, right, the chaos in the temples are lessened. And you begin to see people are now more able to appreciate what they do with the Buddha instead of what they seek. And so that's the first thing we begin to correct. But something even more important is to perhaps renew our understanding of the so-called teaching of suffering or impermanence. Many of us learn the Dharma by getting messages about how impermanence means no good things will ever stay, right? Or dukkha simply means that you will just suffer, right? The whole reality of life is just suffering, nothing else, right? But that's not true. Okay, allow me to read this from the book. Right. In the chapter of suffering, Venerable Master tells us that don't fear suffering. Suffering is only temporary, not the sum total of life in which joy and happiness are found. Thus, there is no need to fear suffering, for it is a positive factor of life. Those who recoil and retreat in the face of hardship will accomplish little. Only those who are unafraid of suffering and adversity will truly succeed. I remember last year being a frequent traveler, right? COVID has kind of locked me down. I was no longer flying. So I spent a lot of time sitting in front of my desk, translating and writing. But these long hours of sitting somehow caused a damage to my knee. I wasn't able to walk up and down stairs easily. Right? And so the doctor told me to rest and minimize the usage of my knee. So I rested even more. Half a year later, my knee was cured. But by then I realized I was still having trouble walking up and down the stairs. So going back to the doctor again, the doctor gave me an answer to the fact that my bones are okay. But the problem is that I have stopped training my muscle, that my muscles around the knees have lost their strength to sustain the entire body. When I make that movement to put my right foot on the step and try to push my whole body up. So in the same way, right, the interactions with the changes or the so-called suffering in life can, according to Venerable Master Xing Yun, become a wonderful training for our spiritual muscle. Right? By getting small doses of challenges every day, we become more ready to face the greater adversities in life. Okay? So that being said, okay, last week we read on the news that an American press has referred to Taiwan as a parallel universe in the era of COVID. Why? Because the people in Taiwan can still go to concerts, right? There's no lockdown, right? People can still leave their house to do shopping, to do gatherings. It's like there's no COVID in Taiwan. But that's probably not true. Okay? It comes from the painful and cruel lesson of the SARS outbreak in 2003, where thousands were infected in just a few weeks and hundreds were dying. Right? This deadly virus caused illnesses in the lung, and people were just passing away. And so why are people so ready for COVID in Taiwan? It was because of that lesson back in 2003. So without that experience, perhaps we would be scrambling just as much as the rest of the world. But should we blame the SARS outbreak? It won't work. It won't help. Blaming the world for our misfortune certainly will not make the world better. And so this lesson about suffering and impermanence, by regarding it as a good training or a nutrient that makes us stronger, right? We find our ways to emerge out of this irresistible or inevitable events in life. Okay, so just want to go quicker. And number 3, right? We can see Dharma or the true Dharma in a relative way. So by relative, while the essence of the event remains unchanging, we begin to perceive meaning in a relative way, which changes with time and space. In other words, any resistance to accept change or to accept the fact that we are continuously renewing ourselves will become a huge hindrance to seeing the true Dharma. Allow me to give you an example. This was a computer invented in 1946, the first supercomputer in the world that took up 1,800 square feet. It weighed 50 tons and consists of 18,000 vacuum tubes. Right? It was able to process information, right? Thousands of times faster than the human brain. But mind you, it carried a massive amount of memory at 2 megabytes. Right? If I was to ask you to pick up, right, a USB storage that carries 2 megabytes, you would tell me that it cannot even store more than 3 pictures. So certainly you would not be using a computer of this kind in our time, would you? What about this? This is a much more advanced computer, right? The first computer with a mouse, right, that moves the cursor around the screen to allow better interaction, right? In 1986, the first Mac computer. But if I was to ask you to send an email with this computer, right, that comes with a double 3.5-inch floppy disk, you would probably think I'm out of my mind, right? So simply, it does not belong to our time anymore. It's not suitable. The same goes to mobile phones, right? That which was invented in the 70s, right? That takes up half of your desk would not be something you carry with you. What about this one that was supposed to be much cooler, right? We call it a brick, a clumsy brick, right? And so the only way for you to be messaging your friends or family would be with a smartphone. But I would say, maybe in 5 years later, if I was to ask you to use this iPhone to message your friends, you're going to tell me that no, it's no longer suitable because we're in a different time. Therefore, in the same way, as we read the teachings of the Dharma, right, once that taught, perhaps in somehow negative and pessimistic ways, maybe we can bring up the courage and awareness to tell us that this is not suited to our time. Let us begin to look at the Dharma that is more suitable to our time in a relative way. Right? So as said before, Buddhism is perceived very differently in the East, in the West, and around the world. So a few years ago in the East, right, Asians believe that the more you pray, the more incense you give, right, the more blessings you receive. The idea of finding a good life and a good death would be the major practice for Buddhists in the East. But in the West, Buddhism was perceived in a much more different way. Many tackled the truth of the reality of life in a more scientific and philosophical perspective. So one of the earliest Western thinkers, George Berkeley, he came across Buddhism by tackling it in a scientific way. He asked this question: if a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound? What do you think? Yes or no? If you think yes, I would say according to his logical thinking, the answer is otherwise. Why? Scientifically, the whole idea of sound is the vibration of air. And this vibration needs to be caught by your eardrums in order for the whole idea of sound to be created. So if you're not there with your eardrums to capture the vibrating air created by the fallen tree, of course you don't hear the sound. And so Western thinkers tackled Buddhism in this way to really tap into the reality of life that makes, let's say, the active left brains, right, much more interested in how they can come face to face with reality. Which one is better? Well, neither is better, neither is worse. It's simply a matter of different perspective that was adopted by people due to different needs. Right? So what do we have today? In modern days, many of us seek for a happier family and life. That is, before we die a good death. Let's begin by learning how to live a better life. And so in this relative way, you will see all forms of Dharma can work as long as you're finding greater happiness and joy. Okay. Would you agree? Maybe we can talk about this a bit later. Okay. And so let's come back to this renewed relative thinking about impermanence. Right? So in the book, Venerable Master tells us that, okay, impermanence is usually viewed as negative, pessimistic, and nonsensical. Right? Somebody has a baby and you go, oh, you poor thing, you have given birth to a baby who's coming to this world for suffering. Right? Nobody does that, do we? Instead, we congratulate the family and say, congratulations on a new life. You're now ready to embark on a new journey with your child, right? And you're very fortunate to be there for your child when he or she goes through the thicks and things of life. And so by saying that, we are already viewing impermanence differently, full of positivity and optimism. Okay. Venerable Master Xing goes further and tells us that impermanence causes the arising and cessation of all phenomena. Right? That is an analysis of the reality. Right? For example, flowers bloom and wilt. The sun rises and sets. Right? The moon waxes and wanes. The coming and going of the four seasons. The start and end of day and night. Because of impermanence, there is diversity and beauty in nature. Because of impermanence, we are motivated to strive harder. And finally, he says, let's not view impermanence in a fearful way. Instead, can we be grateful to change? If we are, it broadens our horizons. It will lift us to a higher plane. We'll view the world in a much more broader perspective. And at the same time, you will have your newfound ability, right, to develop your life further. Okay. I love the saying, right? It's a total renewal from my traditionally Eastern training and thinking background. Growing up thinking, okay, we all eventually grow up to see the good pass away. But now as I look at it this way, right, we grow up to see the good things that are about to come to us amidst the adversity. Right? And Winnie the Pooh couldn't agree more to this. Right? Our most beloved friend, Winnie the Pooh, is so Buddhist, right? Very optimistic, right? The bear with a small head, but with a very big heart, right? He tells us so much about how to appreciate life despite the setbacks, right? So for those who have read this book, you'll remember Winnie the Pooh goes to Rabbit's tree house for a feast, right? He enjoys the honey so much, he eats all of it. And by the time he's about to leave the rabbit's treehouse, he discovered that from eating so much honey, he has gained too much weight, that he got stuck at the door of the treehouse. Right? Pushing, pulling won't work, right? So the rabbit is now faced with the dilemma. His door was blocked with a huge behind of a fat bear, right? So would you feel bad about it? Okay. But fortunately, Winnie the Pooh was in the presence of very good company. His Kalyana Mitras, virtuous companies who teach him to think in a more positive way. So Christopher Robin says to Winnie the Pooh, hey, remember, we've said that all things change. So if good things pass, bad things will pass too. So don't worry, you won't stay like this forever. So why don't you just wait, right? If you get fat, you will get thin. So take some time to wait. Eventually, when you get thin, you get to leave the treehouse. So they all agree to wait. But what about the poor rabbit, who now has this huge object on his wall? The rabbit too also has a positive thinking. So he begins to decorate Winnie the Pooh's behind. Right? If you're stuck with it, then learn to enjoy it. Right? He turns it into a beautiful painting in the house as he waits for this to pass over. Okay. So there's a saying, right? If your sky is covered with gray clouds, then simply paint a rainbow over it. Right? We learn to appreciate the downsides of life because remember, these will all become the nutrients to a better life. Let's learn to appreciate this impermanence or even dukkha in a positive way. Okay. Number 4, we can look at Dharma that is pure and simple by seeing what is clear and easy to understand. Okay. By saying that, right, we don't want to bombard anyone with metaphysical teachings or very difficult to understand theories of the Dharma. Well, that put me off. Yeah, so I have vowed not to put people off, right, with empty talks or metaphysical ideas. And this was inspired by Venerable Master Xing Yun, who says, my only purpose is to ensure that people can understand the Dharma, right? And it's not an easy task. In order to ensure people can understand the Dharma, right, you have to make sure that, again, in a relative way, right, are we actually sharing the truth, right, that is suited to people of different cultures, languages, traditions, people, and climates of different geographical regions. And to do this, we need upaya, the skillful means to enhance the process of sharing the Dharma, right, in a very comfortable and effortless way. Okay. And so many of us, or many of you are probably also teachers or leaders, right, who have to continuously refine your skill to share knowledge and to make sure people learn the knowledge. So in the same way, Venerable Master does it in very simple words. Right? For example, in this calligraphy, which he wrote at 86, in Chinese, 人在众中，心在定中. Right? Settle among people, abide in meditative concentration. So what is the subject of this? I would say the subject is your mind. We tend to begin learning and practicing Buddhism by thinking that a peaceful and tranquil environment is vital to the settlement of the mind. But reality is, how often do we get to be in a peaceful and quiet environment? It's almost impossible. And so Venerable Master Xing Yun offers an option to say that, what if you have the ability to be at peace anytime? So when you're among your community, you're at work, you're with your family, right? Make peace with it and enjoy their presence. But at the same time, where should your mind abide, right? Abide in meditative concentration, in the fact that you allow your mind to connect with that inner Buddha, right? An inner Buddha that is unaffected by the external circumstances. Of course, it's not easy, but this gives us something to ponder over the ultimate goal and the conventional ways of practicing the Dharma. Something more simpler then. On the left, we read this from the sutras all the time. Refrain from all wrongs. Practice all good. Purify your mind. That is what all Buddhas teach. Okay? We read this, okay? But how much do we understand this, right? And it seems like it's conveying a message about how our mind is full of negativity and darkness, right? So we need to purify it. And so Venerable Master Xing Yun, quote unquote, right, dumbs it down, right? We're always talking about dumbing it down for people to understand. Or he simplifies it into the 3 acts of goodness, right? By saying, do good deeds, speak good words, and think good thoughts, right? Somehow it becomes much more simpler, okay? But is it too simple? Okay. I look back to the days when I was in Australia, right? Having grew up in Taiwan, right? People don't really greet each other with caring messages, right? They hardly ever say hi. But after moving to Australia, I faced a very difficult task every day. That is, every day I go to school, I come across a group of classmates who will be asking me the same question. How are you today? Right? When you get asked it every day, it somehow became stressful to come up with a good answer or a proper answer every day. So as I struggled through this daily ritual, they persisted. Every day in school, my Australian friends would be asking me, how are you? How was your weekend? How was your night? Right? How is your family? Right? And so as days went by, I realized that they were doing it in such a natural way, right? It became a good habit to allow the kind and the caring side of you to flow through your words and your actions. And so I slowly also enjoyed reacting to their kindness. By being grateful to their care and concern, I allowed the positive answers to also flow from me very naturally. And that was then I realized what the left verse actually meant. Okay? The simple process of purifying the self begins with the day-to-day practice of small acts of good, right? And as we do that, what you discover that through doing good deeds, speaking good words, and thinking good thoughts, right? What we're doing is we're simply allowing the good to come out of us. Okay? And by doing that, instead of paying attention on the negative sides and thinking about how to eliminate it, we discover that the act of purification in Buddhism allows us to just focus on the good, which will eventually naturally wash out the other half. And so I appreciate how these verses about self-purification become simplified in a very positive way, right? It points directly to our inner Buddha. He continues to share this message, but sometimes we do come across interesting incidents. I think this was in 2013. There was a group of American and European college students who came to Guang and stayed for a month. They went through 3 weeks of monastic life, and they had classes of Buddhism every day. And in their third week, they went through a 7-day meditation, fully observing noble silence and hardcore meditating, right? You've got 12 hours of meditation every day. And at the end of the retreat, Venerable Master Xing Yun met with them and gave them an opportunity to raise questions. Okay. And I discovered that the students became very chun. They started to ask very interesting questions. One of them turned to Venerable Master and asked the following. He said, how many Chan masters does it take to change the light bulb? Right? 1, 2, or 3? I knew it was a trick question, but without thinking, Venerable Master Xing Yun immediately turned to the student and said, do it yourself. And so that do it yourself, again, is a very powerful and simple reminder for everybody to remember the practice and understanding of Dharma must come from the within. We can never simply rely on the blessings of the Buddha or the help of other people to become enlightened, right? If we think that, we're going to have to wait maybe 10 million Asamkhya Kalpas and we're still where we are. So the simple word of doing it yourself, again, resonates with Venerable Master's vow and compassionate thinking, to make sure that everybody gets it in one go. Okay. So one more example, right? We come across this question every day, right? We're always talking about the practice of Yixing Yi. So how do you actually explain the importance of single-mindedness in Buddhist practice? It's not easy, isn't it? And so in the encouragement by Venerable Master Xing Yun to do it creatively, allow me to share this video with you and to see if you can actually get it in one go. Okay, what do we mean by single-mindedness? Okay, so what is your takeaway from the video? Right? What do we mean by Yixing Yi or single-mindedness in Buddhist practice? Right? I see Manzhi on Zoom, right? You probably see a lot of this in Disney World, don't you? People lining up, trying to kind of get a shortcut, and in the end, get nothing. Yeah. So the same goes to Buddhist practice, right? There are millions of teachings and practices that we come across. There are thousands of eminent Buddhist masters whom we can learn from. But we can never be too greedy, right? We can never want anything in one go. Right? And so sticking with one practice and carrying through with it will be a very important mindset that we must establish as practicing Buddhists. And so number 5, we see pure and simple Dharma by correcting what is false and what is wrong, right? Come back to the source. Come back to what the Buddha actually said and think about what Buddha wanted us to do. Right? And so again, in the preface of Buddha Dharma Pure and Simple, right? He says, we need to raise the issue of correcting erroneous views about Buddhism. right? So by eradicating, eliminating the wrong, we allow the pure to appear, right? So we can actually go deeper into understanding why the Buddha taught the Dharma. Okay. So on this table, a couple of you might be reminded of the traditional teachings, right? That teaches us that, we shouldn't really become attached to money because gold is poisonous snake, right? Or when you are married to a family, right? Some traditional Buddhists will tell you that, okay, husband and wife are here to collect debts from you, right? Or anytime you shoot for fame and gain, right? You'll get a reminder of how Buddhists are not supposed to be attached. Buddhists are not supposed to desire, because fame and gain becomes somehow filthy and worthless. Right? But as human beings, right, what Venerable Master Xing recognizes is that we simply just cannot wipe away or ignore who we are. Again, seeing the intrinsic nature. So instead of seeing them as negative, right, correcting these pessimistic views, he says, okay, how do we see this in a pure and simple way? For example, how do we see wealth, right? The Buddha never taught not to hold on, not to make wealth. He says, instead of becoming attached to wealth, why don't you turn to right livelihood, right? A proper means of living and a proper way of spending your money, right? So Venerable Master says, okay, the more wealth you have, right, a practicing Buddhist will learn to exert your influence and enhance your ability to help the world better, right? So that's a change of view. And for husband and wife, you're no longer debt collectors, right? You see each other as Bodhi couples. So you might see in certain Buddhist temples, we have the annual Bodhi couples vow renewal ceremony, right? That is to kind of bring back long-term married couples to the Buddha and say, what if you make a vow again? You want to fresh your vows and remember that you're there as life partners. Okay. So correcting all of this becomes very important issues in the book. So in the future, if you ever have a chance to kind of read the book, you can also talk about it. We'd look forward to hearing your experiences about how your marriage, your family life, and your career has improved through the guidance of the Dharma. Okay. So to sum up, today, I share 5 things about how this book, Buddha Dharma Pure and Simple, can allow us to self-reevaluate where we are and how we are seeing the Dharma. First of all, see with your intrinsic nature. Second of all, see what is the opposite of false and wrong. Right? Thirdly, see in a relative way. And number 4, see in a clear and easy to understand way. Right? If you can't repeat it, you haven't understood it. Right? And so a good practice to repeat what you have learned, to share the Dharma, which is a very, very meritorious too. Right? As you share, you grow. As you share, you improve. As you share, you help other people grow. Right? And number 5, see what needs to be clarified and corrected. And so as we live in the 21st century, right, information is like coming at us like massive floods, right? How are we able to make use of this large amount of information? We might need to begin by filtering through all of them. Okay. And so I think today I barely scratched the surface by saying D for Buddhism, right? Changing our perspective. So why do we learn the Dharma? Right? I hope that after this short session, right, we can come closer to agreeing with the fact that learning Buddhism is not asking us to get away from life, right? We're not asking everybody to retreat from reality, but instead we embrace life and learn to appreciate the good and upside of it. And number 2, as we learn Buddhism, right, it's never about breaking free from the cycle of birth and death, at least not for the short run. Right? In the long run, once you become the Buddha, you will. And if you do, please come back and help all of us. Right? But as we still have to pay a few more trips in the cycle of samsara, right? Learning the Dharma will help us die a good death instead of being free from it. Lastly, I have showed a bad example. We're not supposed to be talking the talk, right? Hopefully, if we're able to get together again, we can begin to walk the walk, right? And to really experience what the Buddha has said to us, refine it, and then to see what it can do to us. So I would like to close my presentation today by sharing this quote with Venerable Master Xing Yun. Learning the Dharma makes us more compassionate and kind. Right? And why is it important? Because loving kindness and compassion are like a priceless passport. A person may own nothing, but no matter where they go, happiness and safety will follow. So if we see the Buddha Dharma in a pure and simple way, right, we allow our inner Buddha to shine. And this inner Buddha does not only entail wisdom. Compassion must also come hand in hand in order for us to truly realize the original intent of the Buddha. Last but not least, just a quick sharing of what we have been doing during COVID. Although we are not able to see everybody, we've been working to share the Dharma continuously. Right? And the first platform you can come across is the Bodhi Light podcast platform. Okay. If you're not into heavy and hardcore Dharma, right, these are 7 to 8 minute short stories about Buddhism written by Venerable Master Xing Yun, adapted into English, and so that we hear something light and inspiring every week. Okay. We are just about to hit our 100th story, and we hope you can enjoy and maybe find inspiration and strength from the stories. And if you are looking for English online Dharma services on YouTube, the Foguangshan English Dharma services offers weekly chanting, although they're recorded, but these weekly chanting are coupled with a selection of Buddhist prayers that you can choose from the playlist. And we also attach a 15-minute Dharma talk in English on topics of Buddhism or everyday practice by the monastics from Foguangshan, fully in English. We hope that on this channel, you're able to find your weekly spiritual sustenance and continue to enhance your faith and strength within in the very difficult times. And so I hope I can see you on these platforms. And if I don't see you, that's okay. You know, if you benefit from these channels, the team at Foguangshan would also be very grateful. That's our way to stay connected with you in this year and the following. And certainly we look forward to meeting you in person. So today, thank you for listening. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your attention. I'm going to stop here now, maybe to leave some time for question and answer.
All right. Thank you, Venerable Miao Guang. We do have a few questions. The first one is from Ms. Ding Dong from Miami. And her question is, nowadays, the changes around the world happen so unexpectedly. Take one incident is the COVID-19 pandemic, and its negative impact has made people feeling so unsafe and troubled. What would be a simple and easy daily practice of Buddhist teaching to stay calm in our mind, eliminate the fears inside, especially facing difficulties with work and people around us?
Okay, thank you for the first question. I think one of the biggest challenges is the need to be alone and away from people, right? Although for monastic practices, right, we seek solitude and private practices in order to meet that inner Buddha. But nevertheless, when we are a part of the community, one of the greatest things we can appreciate is from our Kalyana Mitras, our 善知识, or virtuous company. Right? So in our daily practices, right, even though you're not able to personally meet your Kalyana Mitra, right, can you imagine the presence of wise and compassionate ones near you, right? And when you learn and emulate from their compassion and wisdom. Okay? So my spiritual best friend to share with you today is actually Guang Bodhisattva. Okay? Every day, I recite the Great Compassion Mantra. I also recite the Universal Gate chapter from the Lotus Sutra. Okay? As I recite it, I don't treat it as a ritual, right? When I recite it, I read into the text about Avalokiteshvara's vows, right? To rise from his own seat of total tranquility, step into the world of chaos, and simply listen to the voices that are crying for help. I think as I grow, right, as my age increases, the more I read about Avalokiteshvara's vow, sometimes I well up. I become very emotional at the willingness of Avalokiteshvara to make such a vow, right? I mean, who is ready to kind of go to where calamity is and, to suffer with living beings? Avalokiteshvara is. And so as I read this, as I recite the mantra, right, you immerse in the Bodhisattva's empathetic compassion. When you're surrounded by companions of energy that show universal compassion, you're somehow guided away from your focus of self-suffering, right? So empathy is an amazing power, right? It no longer allows you to focus on your personal little drama, right? Remember, everyday Dharma, not everyday drama, right? So your Kalyana Mitras, be it Avalokiteshvara, if your spiritual best friend is Siddhigarbha, then turn to Siddhigarbha. Sometimes the simple chanting of his name, and then reading about what he did in the sutras, right? Or maybe by Sajaguru, right? The medicine Buddha, right? Who has the 12 vows, right? The vows to really liberate beings. And also the people, the Bodhisattvas and the 12 Devi kings who are here to support him. You see one thing, in all of the sutras, the Bodhisattvas never are alone, right? They turn to the community, they inspire a community, and then somehow the energy and strength to help other people and to deliver ourselves become much stronger. And so in my answer, it doesn't have to be complicated, but I would say, see the gift of time as your opportunity to do more recitations, right? And as you recite Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, the power of incantation or mantra is that when you voice these words, somehow you attune your own frequency to these names, right? And wouldn't it be wonderful to tune your frequency to compassion, to tune your frequency to wisdom, right? To tune your frequency to openness and peace. And so if we always say that we're too busy to read the sutras, right? We're too busy to chant, I think now we have all the time we can do so. So give yourself a chance, right? To connect with your spiritual best friend and allow this spiritual best friend to take you out of the trap of self-misery. I hope this is one of the good ways to practice compassion.
Okay, thank you. Now we have a second question from Angela Chan of Miami. The question is, I know it is a good thing to learn Buddhism at an early age. It will benefit the young ones to approach a right view and good thoughts. As a parent, how should I guide my grandchildren in listening to the stories, sutra chantings? Also, I would like to ask for advice for some published Buddhism books for young readers.
Okay, thank you, Angela. I think it's wonderful you are already benefiting your children or grandchildren by giving them the opportunity to begin learning Buddhism at a young age. I think it was one of the greatest gifts my parents gave to me. Although they were going through a very hard time starting their business, they were going through a very hard time getting used to life in Sydney. My parents nevertheless gave us exposure to the Dharma. And I think that's totally life-changing. Right? It was life-changing in a way that when I came into the presence of monastics, right, who speak and act in a very Buddhist way. And by Buddhist way, let's just say the languages that the monastics or your fellow practitioners at the temple will be forever imprinted in these young minds. right? So that's why Venerable Master Xing Yun introduced Jixiang. When we first started using this expression, it felt extremely awkward, right? It was like I'm looking at like a Chinese like palace drama, right? Only the princesses said Jixiang. But then he reminded us that when we say Jixiang, it means you express your endless good wish to one another, right? May your day go well, right? Yeah, may your days be good. And so I would say being the presence, of this temple community would be one way. And secondly, I think the children's class, right? At the temples or the children's summer camp, organized by the monastics would also be a way to kind of start to bring across the messages of the 3 acts of goodness. And if you're looking for books, I think there are some wonderful publications in Guang 出版社, as well as Buddhist Light publications in America and International Translation Center of Foguangshan. And so allow me to share with you a website. It's called Foguangpedia. Okay, I'm going to type it in the message box. And so on Foguangpedia, we share information about publications. And so, for example, with Bodhi Light, which we've just introduced, you can probably play the podcast to them. And we'll be publishing the books with illustrations very soon. Yeah, and so there are lots of other like stories, like 100 parables in the children's edition that you can probably find in your temples with the assistance of your monastics. But let's just say, I think the everyday interactions, right? Even in you, having immersed in Buddhism for quite some years, right? They will remember what you do. Yeah, so the wonderful way of teaching by example, right? And putting them in the presence again of the shifus, right? My nephew calls me shifu, right? That's okay. I let them call me shifu and they start to ask me all kinds of questions. Yeah, so I think opening up their world in all possibilities, will be very good opportunities. Okay, that's my answer. Yeah.
Thank you. And the next question is from Cindy Leung of Miami. The question is, when learning Buddhism, how can I be certain it is the right practice to cultivate?
Okay. Interesting, isn't it? But my question would be, how do you know that it's the wrong practice? Yeah. What is that practice doing to you that makes you feel wrong? Okay. So remember our discussion on 一心一意, right? If you are single-mindedly focused, right, on a Dharma practice, it automatically connects you to the rest of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Yeah. So sometimes people ask me, what sutra do you read, right? What Buddha's name do you chant, right? And I would say each and every one of us has our own circumstances. And to your surprise, right, if you want it bad enough, this Buddha and Bodhisattva will come to you, right? So the one that comes to you is probably the one you need the most. Yeah. So for me, I did not come across Avalokiteshvara by accident, because the first statue in my family household was a statue of Avalokiteshvara. And as you get to know more about this practice of the sutra, I think you'll feel much more comfortable and ease. Okay, that's my answer. So focus on one thing at a time, keep at it, see what it does to you. And I believe going on following the path laid out by Venerable Master Xing Yun, right? 正信的佛教. Rest assured that you are on a good path. And when you're on this good path, all you need is faith. And faith will never turn its back out to you.
Thank you, Venerable Miao Guang. And the next question is from Adrian Sun Anderson of Miami. Here is his question. Thank you, Venerable Miao Guang, for this wonderful Dharma talk. In our daily life, how do we ensure that our practices are being done using our Bodhi nature and not simply out of cultural habit? Thank you again.
Okay. Can we separate our Buddha nature with our personal character? Right? Can we draw the line? If we cannot, Can we draw the line between our personal character as well as our cultural upbringing? Yeah. Probably no, because all three are us. Right? So the holistic teaching of the Dharma, right, the beauty of it, this holistic teaching lies in the fact that we become much more able to accept everything that we are. Right? The bigger your heart is, the greater your achievements. Right? And so at this point, right, finding our ability to simply appreciate and make use of who we are will be a very secure path. And so certainly in the 21st century, the whole world is coming together. Right? If I was to go to take a genetic test, I don't know, maybe I would have some genetics of an Egyptian inside me. I don't know. Right? And so it's okay. It's okay as long as you feel that it's assisting you in focusing. It's assisting you in feeling comfortable and at ease. Right? So sometimes I chant my mantras in Chinese. I do it because my community does it, right? But when I'm alone, right, I become very honest with my difficulty to actually read those mantras in Chinese. So sometimes I turn to the Roman spellings of the medicine Buddha mantra, right? Om Namo Bhagavate Basaje Tathayata, and so on. Right? And so, in other words, whatever works for you, right, it's Dharma. Whatever doesn't work for you, it's probably also Dharma. Okay? So drawing a line may not help, but the most important thing is to be able to embrace everything. I especially appreciate an advice from Venerable Abbess Manke from Nantian Temple in Australia. I actually watched her work with her team. Her team was designing a poster on a weekend community practice. And the weekend community practice consisted of 3 speakers. So what they did was they drew 3 squares and put each of the speaker in a square. When Venerable Abbess Manke saw this, she says, don't draw lines, let them blend in with each other. Because the moment you draw lines, right, you separate yourself from one opportunity to rise above. So I may say this at a very abstract level, right? But next time we see the need to kind of make a difference, right? Think about how Venerable Master Xing opened up a path that everybody can travel on. Right? He never said, you're American, I'm Chinese, you speak English, I speak Mandarin. He says, no, I see you as a part of me. You don't have to speak to me as long as our heart connect, right? We proceed together. So it could be culture, it could be religious, right? It could be philosophical. If at this moment it needs to be cultural, let it be cultural. And if at the next moment it needs to be philosophical, then let it be philosophical. Open up your diamond, allow each side of the diamond to shine. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Venerable. We do have question line up. However, due to the time, it's approaching 9:30 right now, so we have to stop here. So hand it back to Venerable Guang for the remaining of the lecture.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the questions. I especially appreciate how you guide all the questions towards your actual practice. Right? It also gives me an opportunity to really think about whether what I have said is relevant to how you're practicing your Dharma and how you're kind of proceeding with your life. And I would say it's not always about lecture, right? In the future, when you have a group discussion, I believe once you have that opportunity to speak and to discuss with one another, the answers will naturally come to you. And I also look forward to our future opportunities to interact and discuss online. But due to limited time today, having said thank you to all of you, I would like to end by inviting all of you to join us in saying a prayer to Avalokiteshvara for safety from COVID-19. Right? We are not out of the dark. we're still in the midst of all of it. And everybody is fighting their fight to stay alive. Everybody is fighting the fight to emerge out of this crisis stronger. So please join your palms and let us allow the prayer written by Venerable Master Xing Yun to show us some direction as to how we can make it through this very hard time. A prayer to Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva for safety from the novel coronavirus outbreak. Written by Venerable Master Xing Yun, the founder of Guang. O great compassionate Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, as we are confronted by the novel coronavirus breakout, many are suffering from mistreatment, adversity, and fear. We pray to you for your compassion and blessings, so that we may have the courage and wisdom to confront the outbreak with calmness and fortitude, to face the illness with confidence and acceptance. O great compassionate Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, as cities become sealed off and events are suspended, we are in dire need of your spirit of alleviating suffering. Let us care and help one another and not be struck with a panic. Let us support and encourage one another to strengthen our faith. May the momentary isolations become retreats for self-introspection. May the momentary inconvenience become mindful practices of self-improvement. O great compassionate Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, this is the moment when unity is most crucial. Let us trust in the government to resolve the crisis. Let us thank the medical professionals for treating the disease. No matter how difficult the situation, as long as there is compassion and wisdom, when we all practice the 3 acts of goodness, do good deeds, speak good words, and think good thoughts, if we all protect the environment and have respect for all lives, we shall be able to turn peril into safety. O great compassionate Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, at this moment, we sincerely recite your name. Blessed be Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. We would like to take your liberation and ease as a model. From now on, we will distance ourselves from contrary and delusive ideas to contemplate the ease of the individual. We will distance ourselves from discrimination and personal conjecture to contemplate the ease of circumstances. We will distance ourselves from attachment and entanglement to contemplate the ease of affairs. We will distance ourselves from the 5 desires and trouble of the world to contemplate the ease of the mind. O great and compassionate Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, we pray for your blessings. Please help the survivors be delivered from suffering and recover their good health. Please help the diseased be reborn in the Buddha land and rest well in peace. May this world be free from the turmoil of the outbreak. May each and every one of us be safe and well. O great compassionate Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, please accept our sincerest prayer. O great compassionate Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, please accept our sincerest prayer. Thank you very much. May the Buddha and Bodhisattvas bless us and give us the strength to push through life and to reach out to those who are in need of help. Buddha bless, and I hope to see you again. Thank you very much.
Now we have concluded the talk tonight. Thank you so very much, Venerable Miao Guang, for this very insightful lecture and for answering our questions. Now, thank you all for participating online as well. Until next time, have a wonderful rest of your day.